Hi, everybody. This is Conversations about Architecture. And today I have an incredible guest, a guest that enlightened me in a domain of design and architecture that's becoming more and more popular and more useful, visually very appealing, as the domain of AI image generation. And my guest is Lev Manovich. Hi, Lev.
Hi, hello, welcome.
I would like to give just a short introduction of your professional roles and career achievements. So Lev is a professor of computer science at City University of New York, CUNY. Lev is a researcher in the domain of new media, software studies, and digital humanities. Lev founded and is the director of Cultural Analytic Lab and is an author of a famous book, The Language of New Media, and the newer book, Cultural Analytics. Everything is correct?
More or less, yes. But it was still too long, but let's go.
So I know, Lev, I talked about you before things that happened back in Russia with some friends of mine from the art world and from architectural world, and the people in the world of art and the world of digital art as well. They knew you very well, and architects knew a little bit less about you. And I think the topic that I want to discuss with you today is this intersection that's making you a key figure in this emerging world of AI image and video generations. So I would like to discuss with you today this new softwares, and you can maybe define them a little bit better, such as MidJourney, such as DALL-E, such as Gaudi. It's this hot subject and the thing that's been developing for last month and a half and like been open to people for last month and a half. So where your fascination for this programs came from and like how you related to this, you can tell.
Good. So I should mention that my first introduction to computers and programming was still in Moscow when I was, I was 14. And we had a special, 2-year course in programming when I was in high school. So it was the mid-70s, very early. And when I immigrated to America, New York, in 82, I saw first attempts, at using 3D computer graphics in movies. And I kind of had this intuition that one day it will become a major media, as important as photography, drawing, or architecture models. And I've been working with computer graphics and later what we used to call digital media since 84. Now, AI itself, is a very old field. It emerges around mid-50s or perhaps even 1950, because in fact, it was in 1950 that a young MIT student coined the term pattern recognition. So this idea that computer can recognize patterns. And this is the foundation of a contemporary stage of AI. Which is the use of very big neural networks, which are trained on examples, and they recognize and extract patterns and structures from images, spaces, text, and so on. And then we can also generate new ones. So the tools which you mentioned, MidJourney, DALL-E, and others, we're not limited, we're part of this larger paradigm. Because we also have tools for text generation, such as GPT-3. There's also 40 or 50 apps, Copy AI, and so on, which you can use to generate text. And these apps are even more fascinating. The other day, I copied a paragraph from a most extreme modernist text by Virginia Woolf, a famous 20th century writer. And to my total surprise, the app continued writing in the same style. I mean, people already writing academic articles. So in fact, I would say that AI is perhaps more successful with text, but in the last year, there was a real breakthrough. This technology is a bit older when you mentioned. It starts with a DALL-E system, which was released last year, where you can type a word, a few words, a phrase, up to a paragraph. And then the system interprets it and generates images corresponding to a description. And as you pointed out, so many people from so many fields started to experiment with the system. lots of my friends, including many people from architecture, especially people who affiliate themselves with so-called parametric architecture, something which demonstrated by work of somebody like Zaha Hadid, right? So people who already were using computers and also accustomed to the idea of generating lots of different versions of the same design.
Yeah.
So maybe what I'll do is just very quickly share the screen and just show some examples of images people generate. In effect, I have MidJourney open, so we can also see how the process works.
Let's do it.
Okay. So right now, I mean, we have to remember, right, that any day the software can be upgraded, new ones can come in. So particular interface which we're using today can change tomorrow. But for now, people are using Discord server, right? So, and everybody is kind of doing it at the same time. There are hundreds of people. Well, here it is, somebody rendering. Look, somebody is doing something Zaha Hadid style, gold building floating on the lake. So you can see what comes out. So you basically type what's called a prompt, which is a text string. You can specify the content. You can also specify the style of rendering. You can reference existing artists. So the system understands endless number of cultural references from history, from contemporary art, but you never know what's going to work out, right? Sometimes I put a reference to a very famous artist, I get something kind of idiotic, and sometimes not such a famous artist, it works very well. For example, it's very good at generating drawings in Leonardo style. And, people, of course, say that it opens, unlimited doors to our imagination. It can do anything. It's not quite true. As I discovered, it has its own kind of biases, so to speak. It has its own built-in aesthetics. So if you don't type any style specifications, something very particular comes out. Yeah. But let's just see what. Let's see. Okay, so here's what the person did, right? Zaha Hadid, style architecture, but made from gold. Yeah, I would say that's already pretty good, and this is, I would say, as good, right, as you can get today. I mean, there's a limit to how much details it can do. It's also hard to control composition. It's a bit hard to move a camera, but you notice that I think what makes this image beautiful or pretty, and I use pretty in a kind of negative sense, right? Almost a bit kitsch, is that it's sweet, excellent in rendering effects, right? Yeah. So it puts this beautiful landscape, which can come from any video games or Hollywood movies, lighting. Yeah. And I think the reason people are fascinated with this particular system as opposed to, for example, system from Google, is that it's not really a machine for visualizing what you imagine. I think of it, let me show you some other examples, just a moment. I'm going to show some examples which I saved just to demonstrate variety of things it can do. And while I'm doing it, I will sort of make my arguments. Right. So here I'm just saving different examples, not necessarily because we're the best, but to show how the system can generate images using a variety of different artistic styles, artistic media, rendering. Right. So something like this. Okay, just a moment.
Basically, well-formulated input can give you an image of a very high visual quality. So,
well, yes, but sometimes you have to formulate like a whole paragraph of details. Sometimes you simply say, this is in the style of Japanese woodblocks, and this is really amazing, right? So what I want to say is that I think what's interesting about this generation of AI, it's only possible today, right? It's only possible after millions of images of best art have been digitized, and after Hollywood, video games, illustrations, architecture, websites, Behance, right? We have a web full of references and to all kinds of styles, imaginations, and so on. So the system is kind of learned all this, right? So I think of it not as some kind of dream visualizer or imagination visualizer. I think of it as a post-media generating machine. Right? So what it does, it generates images which are designed to look pretty. I think it knows about complementary colors, cold and warm, and it knows about composition. How it knows precisely, I don't know.
Maybe there were some ratings.
Maybe designers don't know, and it kind of builds up, right, on thousands of years of human art history. So you can say it's an art history machine, and I think this is the most important point. You can trick it into doing something else, but by default, it gives you very pretty and sometimes almost like a kind of kitschy pictures, which is both good and bad. So I'll just show like a few more examples, like for example, right, simple examples of very different looks you can get, right? You can have very three-dimensional things, right? Shining gold. It's very good with smoke. This is like just kind of Japanese woodblock, right? And it's quite amazing. It's amazing how beautiful these pictures are, right? And you don't have to put the word beautiful or symmetrical. So it's really, I would say, a media aesthetic machine.
It hits like our mind in the area where it receives visual effects, and like
absolutely
what we call pretty, that's what they show.
But it can. I mean, not all of it is funny with video games. For example, you can make a very good photorealistic, kind of very good believable paintings, almost like Rembrandt-like. It takes a bit of a skill. So you can think of it as AI, as a person who went to all the museums in the world and went to all the art schools and now gets out. And I'll show you just one more thing, which is just to before the class. Before the class and professor, before our talk, I basically wanted to generate few images, only giving a single word, like a cube or a sphere, to show you how it has this aesthetic, right, kind of biases, right? So you can see my input was cube, sphere, sphere, sphere. So when I put a cube, this is what I got, right?
I got the one from the top bottom. I had once very similar.
Let me open it to be precise, right? Just a moment. So this is the cube. Now I only wanted to get a single cube, right? A very minimalist image. But look at what it created. It created this very complex. I mean, you can go and sell it.
It gave you a Marvel artifact.
Look, it gave you Marvel, right? People. It also has
Marvel. You know the Marvel movies, like they have like this.
Absolutely,
the Tesseract artifact. That's what it is.
It also has a preference. You can see for particular colors, kind of orange and blue, which is kind of very Hollywood colors.
Very appealing.
And when I ask it to make a simple sphere, okay, pencil drawing with sphere. Look at that.
This is Escher-esque.
Escher, but very beautiful. And when I say, okay, let me add the word like rendering, photorealistic. Okay, so we got something like this, and something like this, right? And then finally, when I simply said a square. So this is what you get. So I think this experiment, whenever you want to study any system, right, social system, cultural system, technological system, you have to kind of probe it for very simple things, like in psychology. So this is what you get for a square. And it's fascinating. And if you actually want to get simply like a black square, it actually takes much more effort.
It's like a slip of a tongue. In psychology. It's like,
so I think I will stop share and, we can continue.
That's I want to build a little bit on the materials of the conversation that you had a year ago with Matias del Campo, just because you guys, I think, went really deep into a similar topic of AI and art and creativity. But you were talking about something that actually emerged like a couple months ago, and right now we can actually already talk about how it works. This AI generators, and about the biases. It's very interesting subject. It's revealing one of the topics that you guys had, the topic of limitation that AI shows, like our own limitation that you can see through the results of AI.
Yes. I think when social media has appeared, right, it was MySpace in 2000, and now we have Instagram, etc. To me, and now we have this MidJourney and our AIs. To me, these sites offer absolutely fascinating material for research into contemporary visual culture and also into research in contemporary imagination. Because in fact, you can use data science to measure things like variability or diversity of images and text. And I would love to have millions of images from, MidJourney AI or Instagram and can visualize, right, what we have. And then we'll see what we don't have, right? Why we don't have particular compositions, why we don't have particular styles. And as you saw, I think from examples I saved, the limitations of AI is not technological, because technological limitations, with systems develop very quickly. It's kind of limitations of our popular culture. Right? So I'll show you later the images I generated. Because I come from Russia, I was studied art in the 1970s. I'm kind of modernist, so I have a different imagination. But most people today, and this is not a criticism, right? Where imagination is framed, shaped by contemporary visual culture, right? And things like Hollywood and video games in particular. So what you see, right, is a picture of a particular kind of popular collective imaginary, right? Collective
average temperature.
Well, I would say it's not average, right? Because if you saw there's a variety of things. I think many people who use the system have artistic background, right? We know about Zaha Hadid, we know about Frank Gehry, we know about Escher. But an architect, right? What's interesting, a professional architect would probably never think about making building in a Zaha Hadid style from gold. So what you also have is an incredibly interesting mixture of high and low, right? So to me, what's amazing about the systems is not what we can do, but as I said, the way we offer us a kind of window into the ocean of our culture, where things are combined in the ways we don't imagine, and also some things are popular, which we don't think, and other things are not, right? So it's a kind of probe, right? A kind of microscope into the collective, although probably mostly North American kind of imagination.
Lev, to just be honest, like fair, to be fair with like the entire community of people who are trying the software right now, there is a way to kind of limit the scope of your search, right? Like that's what you did basically. So for your results, you're diving into the area that you're interested. You limit yourself from this kind of noise of like more pop, more kind of this pretty looking imagery, and you go into more like a narrow world, right? So this tool still has an option to filter it out.
Well, I would say maybe not, in fact. Because, what I did is like I showed you, right, Discord MidJourney channel. So I was simply going through the channel, and whenever I see the image, which had an interesting kind of look, I would save it. Right? So actually these images, which I said, we saved like hundreds of more. And I'm actually now doing on a kind of cultural analytics project where I'm going to use computers and visualization to visualize hundreds of images. I hope to have it ready in a few weeks. So I was actually less interested in the content. I was more interested in different looks. And there is not, right? So far, there is no search, right? There is no search, as far as I know. So it's not like an internet, right? There is no Google search. So what's interesting is you're doing your own stuff and you're like in the middle of all these other people. So actually, I would say it's probably a pretty good sample of what's out there.
That it gives you also options to exclude several things. So in Discord, there is like already a language that you can use, like there's about 200 commands that you can use. You can check there's a library, and you can say like no and say things that you don't want to have. Basically,
you can definitely exclude. This is a kind of parameters in actually MidJourney, right? So you can set a lot of landscape of no people, but I was referring more to you can basically have this channel, which is a bit like a Facebook, and you see new images popping up. And I'm not sure. I don't think there's a search function which would allow you to search with images and content. But I'm sure it will come.
Lev, would you mind if just to kind of break a little bit the flow, I will show some images that I found like people experimenting in architecture. So we can just also show to people how architects actually use it right now, because they're a little bit
a little bit different.
In one way narrow, yeah. In one way they're more specific, more they come with more visually appealing like images. But on the other hand, you can see there also limitations, because I see how people who are really going deep into this in different accounts, they post images that end up still looking the same. That's very interesting, but the images are beautiful.
So what you're saying is that, you know, the genius, right, of MidJourney, which is also its limitation, it's kind of like it shows up itself, but we don't know if this is limitation of people imagination, or this is limitation, or this is like a bias of MidJourney, or maybe both.
Yeah.
But anyway, we don't want to be critical, because we don't want these people not watch our video. I mean, I love all the architects, and I feel very honored.
No,
I can participate in the discourse. But as I said, it's like a new tool, right? Like a pencil was a tool before, or 3D model. And, you know, like every tool, it makes particular things more easy and particular things more difficult, but there is a incredible variety, right?
Can you see my screen right now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
these are some architects.
This kind of parametric, I would say parametric bias.
Yeah,
right? We don't see modernism. We don't see Miss Van der Rohe for some reason. We don't see constructivism, which is, you know, you wonder why, right?
Yeah, we see this like modern aesthetics being merged with some kind of biological.
Basically, you know, what in the 2000 journalists called blobs, right? Because there was this fashion for blob architecture and then etc. But also notice these beautifully perfect landscapes.
Yes.
Right.
And dreamy,
basically.
So
all the architecture realization people may be out of jobs soon, right?
You would think so. Actually, do you think they really will be out?
No, of course not. In fact, what will be out, people who like so will be out, and people who like really good, because, you know, even if you only use the system, you need to have artistic skills to guide it and to choose best images.
Exactly.
It's not going to put people out of job. In fact, it will kind of separate excellent people from everybody else, which is, you know, so you also have this kind of Gaudi aesthetics. This one is nice, right? Because this is actually not the old building, not the parametric one.
Yes, that's like this.
I mean, one idea which I have, but I haven't tried it. I wonder if you can use the system to almost generate cultural possibilities which haven't been realized. Like, what if Gaudi lived a bit longer, right? What if Gaudi was commissioned to build a bridge? So in a way, it can be an incredible machine for
that's brilliant.
Extending what humans have done before, almost extending and filling the gaps.
So exactly about this, like what I was thinking about to ask you. You know how AI that was applied to chess, right? Like Deep Blue and so on, how it discovered new moves that people would never use before. So how the masters of chess were surprised that machine actually make a move that was never made at this moment of the position, and then won the game. So I talked about it with some architects recently, and that was the kind of topic that we kind of use, like the discovery of new connections. So basically, the options are all there, but AI helps you to connect several kind of dots more efficiently or in a new way that you did not think about before. So just what you said about Gaudi, like to extend some system to some logical continuation that we don't do, but like it can do, because it can
there are a couple of things which the systems are good for, and I think this is what fascinates computer scientists. One is kind of blending concept. So you can say like a bear riding the space rocket, right? So basically, I don't see it that much here, but you can say, okay, building by Gaudi and Le Corbusier. Right. So as I said, if you think about cultural creation as these points in a space, we can connect these points and get these morphs, blends, hybrids. I think and another thing which is very good for right now is giving you really amazing kind of surface representation. It's very good for research into surfaces and materials. What it's not good for, right? For now, it doesn't understand anything about 3D. Doesn't understand about plans, right? So it basically gives you rendering. So you can also say it's very appropriate, because already in 2000, people were saying that architecture now lives in the age of Photoshop. What's important is the rendering, right? These parametric buildings look very good in photographs and newspapers. And this continues the trend. but I think it's maybe just a limitation of particular moment, right? I mean, people may, soon refine this kind of systems, and you'll be able to actually generate variety of 3D plans, which of course what architects have been already doing for maybe 20 years, or in fact even in the 70s using shape grammars. So right now it's really focused on the visual. But the visual, right, can be very suggestive. After all, architects start by drawing on napkins, supposedly. So I think you can read lots of information from a single image like this. Sorry, I'm interrupting. I think I'm just too excited, and
no.
Maybe I shouldn't have my coffee. I'll try to be more calm down.
No, don't worry about it. Let's use the momentum. What's the goal of this research in general? Like, what people are trying to achieve? Do they try to commercialize it, like to replace graphic designers, to replace people who render it, and just like offer this program as a media?
Yeah. Well, so I think if we look at the history of digital media, right, technologies, and I'm lucky that I follow this history from 84, so that's 38 years. I mean, basically, this work is done by computer scientists, right? So computer science has hundreds of different subfields. So computer graphics or 3D graphics is one subfield, AI is another subfield. And most of these people were simply driven to do interesting research, to publish papers.
Just curiosity.
Well, curiosity, but not always. For example, in the 1980s and 1990s, some of the key algorithms and techniques in computer graphics were created by scientists who work for Pixar and who work for Lucasfilm, right? In fact, a very basic technique of compositing, right, where you have multiple images and you can combine them seamlessly, right, using alpha channel, was created for, I think, one of the Star Wars movies for Lucasfilm. I mean, Photoshop also came out from research of Lucasfilm. So in this case, the idea was not to replace everybody else. The idea was to create a technique to make like a more interesting movie, right? Or create more interesting video games. So lots of scientists are now working for these companies. Now, in the case of MidJourney, it's a very small startup, a research lab. We only have 10 people. And the guy who's running it is very experienced, and he's kind of innovator. So already 11 years ago, he created a very interesting company in Silicon Valley called Magic Leap. So we had this very interesting interface. And he said, right now, we just want to experiment, and we don't want to monetize it, although you do have to pay $10 or $30 for your account, maybe to keep a service going. And in terms of replacing, I mean, there's lots of discussions about it, right?
I didn't say replacing yet.
No, but what I want to say is that I think if you look at the kind of history of computer technologies in the last 30, 40 years in cultural sphere, on the one hand, we put certain professions out of business. On the other hand, we create new professions.
Yes,
so now we have lots of people doing video games. You have people designing characters, designing landscapes, designing UI, and so on. In architecture, right, there is a whole profession of people who do architecture visualizations. So labor, right, so how it all balances out, I think impossible to say, but I think that tools like MidJourney most likely will create kind of new professions. People now talk about prompt engineering.
Like writers, prompt.
But ultimately, we know that majority of architects never get to build anything on their own. We're likely to work in the companies. Other people kind of go start, web businesses like Pinterest and so on. So ultimately, you can make all the images you want. I don't know if it's going to help you to get more commissions. Or if it does, then I think it will be most important thing for architects, because architects really want to build, as far as I know. Of course, we can build for metaverse, so maybe people will be satisfied.
Exactly.
Build for metaverse, and then we'll have like a MA, M architecture for metaverse architecture. I mean, but if people are satisfied, then I think this will really kind of be perfect for that.
Yeah, I think it falls definitely right now in the category of metaverse architecture, which already is part of what modern architectural big office is doing. They're already designing for metaverse.
They're already designing.
Yeah. So like there are teams inside of offices like big who already focused on it, and like I know some friends of mine here, licensed architects, who are moving from like established architect offices to metaverse offices, and they do this architecture where you don't need a license for it, but you need
Do you have any images you can show, or it's all proprietary?
No, I have images that some friends of mine are publishing, and this company is just all metaverse company. Actually, I
myself haven't seen them. Like I mean, I actually didn't know it already exists.
Yes, it's
we live in a culture where like whatever we think is going to happen tomorrow just happened yesterday.
It's already happening. It's crazy. Yeah, that's totally.
Well, I think
totally
it's a very good development, right? Because commercial architecture is limited, right, by construction industry developers trying to cut costs. Not everybody is going to build Zaha Hadid building, so I'm hoping that metaverse will not be as boring as a suburb imagined by Mark Zuckerberg, but metaverse will really become a place for so-called paper architecture. And at least, even though we can't rebuild all the boring concrete buildings on our planet, we can create alternative planet of really very imaginative architecture. So I think it's I think in that point of view, metaverse can be the great thing for architecture. Or for thing for spatial culture, let's say spatial culture.
Like talking with architects, like people who have their offices and who work like on a hardcore architecture about things like MidJourney, for example, people are terrified with the quality and the speed with which this thing can give you the final result. And the architecture itself lives between the client's desire to have a building and the rendering that you get in MidJourney. In between of it, like years of it, years of work,
That's right? You basically skip the stage of paper napkin sketch and model building. But do you think that the fact that it gives you such amazingly professional renderings is this? I mean, like every media technology, there are probably good things about it, and there are probably some bad things about it. As a professional architect, and I'm not, what do you think? I mean, because you kind of know what architects are thinking. So what do you think about it? The fact that it basically gives you this like very rich, very, very kind of luxury visualization right away of your idea.
Yeah. I think it's what we discussed with you before. It's control points. Like I want to use the tools. Like I'm of course, as everybody, afraid by the change, but I want to embrace the change because I think it's inevitable, and just like to see how we can use it for good. The thing with MidJourney, for example, right now you can see the limits already. You can see how it's only an image of architecture. It's not architecture itself. You can see how the scales are wrong. You can see how the slabs are wrong, like structure is disregarded.
In fact, it's basically like when you try to render some complex spaces, even like a room, it makes lots of mistakes. So it is a bit like a dream, right? Where things are not. Another thing is what I find, it's very hard to control the camera. So for months, I'm trying to figure out how to control the camera. Let's say I want to look at the box from the angle. I can't figure it out, right? It basically has this preference for one point linear perspective. Where things
that's the thing.
In a way, it's almost you can think of it as a some kind of brain-like structure, right? Where it can imagine concepts, right? So if you imagine a cube, but for example, when I imagine a cube, I look at it from a side, but it imagines as though everything is brought like in front of your kind of memory, and everything is just it's like this icons of things.
I think that's you need to think about how in popular culture, in internet, these things are described. So if you do the close-up, the word like close-up, like facade close-up, then you get the detail of the facade.
Well,
if
you sort of get, but for example, you can't. What doesn't work is that I want to picture this building seen from 100 feet. That doesn't seem to work at all.
Like a bird's eye view. I think the thing is,
bird's eye view kind of works. Panoramic works. But for example, mid plane or
it's still
moving perspective, moving the camera point. It's kind of. I mean, I can't figure it out for months.
It's kind of like how this view is called in photo banks. Like there are a million of photographs of like I don't know the city from such a certain angle, and like how photographers call this angle because that's how the machine is going to look for it. It's going to look through the database where people call it this way. So like if you narrow it by this word, so I guess like that's the art of the prompt right now, to not to think directly with words, but to think how people are using these words en masse in order to like simplify the path for the machine.
Well, I think your reference to stock imagery, right, is very good, because in a way stock imagery I remember I wanted to write an article about stock imagery already in 1990 because it was already very prominent. I mean, it's a very important reference, but here's what's interesting. Up until, 2010s, you basically had categories. Okay, I want picture with sky, I want picture with textures. But now with photo banks, right, we have millions of images and you can simply search, right? So in a way, we have many, many more things. But at the same time, I believe that this kind of popular commercial imagination, right? Images people use for annual reports, for brochures.
Yes.
No, but there's a reason why we're not going crazy, right? Because every day we're exposed to thousands of images. And I have this theory, which came to me in 1990. And the theory was, even though we're exposed to thousands of images on videos every day, we kind of like compositions, the kind of content we have, it's maybe 15, 20 types.
Yes.
We have endless variations of the same types. So that's why we don't have to look at every image very carefully. Our brain immediately recognizes, it's an instance of, I don't know, a business girl in front of computer, right? Or
it's like an archetype.
Meeting, right? And again, it would be possible to do kind of cultural analytics using, in fact, AI to analyze it. And you'll see, like, I think what we'll get like a landscape where a particular type of images are with heels. I mean, if you go to Instagram and look at art, or you go to art galleries, you do find many, many more things. But in terms of photography, and I think maybe we're saying things for architecture, like for high-end, right? Architecture, always people who studied Harvard and Yale. If you look at tens of thousands of renderings, you'll probably also find certain types. Here's a parametric type. Here's some kind of wood structure type. So, and as you said, maybe the genius of AI, like MidJourney, is that it will allow people to expand their imagination, which I think is, for me, would be the best use of technology of our time.
So how do you, can you give me an example? So how do you expand? Because before we were talking about how it just showing you more or less like averaged version between like multiple, but like how do you expand it, as a tool?
Okay, well, so what I'm going to do is a bit arrogant, right? Because of course I don't want to claim that I'm like better than anybody else. I'm not better or worse, but
you just know how it works.
I do have a different background, right? Because because I remember I was 14. I studied art with a very talented kind of painter, and she brought me a book of Morandi, right, an Italian modernist painter. It's just this is the best painting. And then when I was 14, I also saw Tarkovsky, The Mirror. So these are the references in my head. So what I'll simply show you is the images I generated in the last few days. I posted them on Facebook and Instagram. People seem to like it. And again, and I will explain a bit my strategy of trying to kind of trick the system to do something different. Again, I'm not saying these images are great or terrible. I will simply explain to you my strategy, what I did. Okay. So I have a series which I call, I gave it a name, right? I call this Architecture for a Snow Planet. Now, people said, Lev, you're probably thinking about snow and ice because of all this, fires and extreme temperatures in the world right now. I said, yes, but actually I had this fascination of snow. And I remember, like 20 years ago, I wanted to make a video where using computer graphics, I would visualize different kinds of snow. And that's what I started. So I basically set to a system. My prompt was very simple. Let me just simply select few of these things. Just a moment. Let me just select few things, so we don't have to look at millions of things.
I think they're not being selected right now.
I'm not selected. Okay, so let me just. Just a moment, because it's simply just I see. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm just trying to. Okay, I know why, because we have a shift. Okay, just a second.
Yeah, because you're having Mac.
Well, so is that bad? Is that bad? Mac is bad. Okay, now it's selecting. Well, it's what I have.
Yeah, while you're doing this, I just want to say that we started. Okay.
Sorry, just a moment. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so let me make it bigger. Okay, so basically, and it takes like probably a day, right? Probably 5-6 hours to get it, because, the system is very, very sensitive. So sometimes you have a prompt and simply adding a word very changes things. So this was most successful. So basically my prompt was more or less, different kinds, a catalog of different kinds of complex snow, right? And tell me if you saw anything like this on MidJourney. I haven't, right?
Yeah, no, I have not.
So again, the system is like almost like it has this unconscious, right? Or it's almost like you're landing on a new planet and you're like trying to step in different directions, right? So we got this really different types of snow, different texture, right? Soft snow, crystal snow, fractal snow, right? This was, for example, this one is a bit less successful because I think we don't. I mean, it's nice, but we don't have as many variety. This was like a kind of attempt. This was my first attempt.
Why is it with grid?
Well, with grid because I basically wanted it to generate different kinds, right? And I can't. It doesn't know if I tell it. Okay, put different kinds of snow on the table. It's too complex for it, right? So I basically set like a grid or a catalog, something like this.
Got it.
And when I started creating spaces filled with snow, and I didn't really say anything about architecture. As I said, different kinds of complex snow in empty white space or in empty white room. And again, because it has this like biases, it started putting the snow in a very interesting modernist or kind of medieval Baroque architecture, right? Look at this.
You build a trap. And you.
Well, I don't know, right? and I think you see different kinds of snow, right? We have like I think it's called old snow, young snow, but I didn't say anything about this architecture.
Right? It just came up.
As I said, this is, I think, to me, this is the challenge of using MidJourney. It's like too good. It immediately kind of drives you in the direction of something too pretty.
Do you like it? Do you think it's actually cool, like a good quality because it adds up?
I mean, let's put this way. I
thing?
think I like it. I posted it last night on Facebook, Instagram. I got like 200, 250 likes on both.
Yeah, I really like the image. I'm saying, do you like this feature that it adds up this criteria?
Yeah, so I would say I don't know what's amazing, but it's definitely different from what people do, right? So what I find is that maybe one way to do it, like some people have very long prompts, but what I find interesting is not to fight the system, but to basically just, because it will generate interesting things by itself. You just have to guide it. And let me just show you more examples, right? Look at this one. So somebody said, that really looks like a lot like a scene from Tarkovsky's Stalker. To me, this is like a best compliment, right? Another one, right? Another one. And then this is
cinematographic,
basic variations. Look at this one. Like I wonder what are we interesting, like what are the structures here? And then maybe I just show you just because I showed you some things, I'll just show you something else. So that was like one type of architecture generated, even though I didn't say anything about architecture. Let me just a second. Let me just make it a bit bigger. And then it also made this a kind of like a bit modern, a bit like futuristic one. And again, I didn't say anything, right? So this is to me, right? So I think the limitations or biases of a system are as interesting as its quote unquote infinite possibilities. And then I'll show you one more thing, right? If it's okay. I also basically what I realize is that, right, I want more minimal images with less detail, less realistic, because to get away from this kind of photorealism, architectural rendering quality.
Because that's the first thing that people
works
jump into.
If I ask it to make etching, right? So I ask it to make an etching, and then you get something, because what we like about human art, right? I mean, if it's not photorealistic, our brain fills the gap, right? So we want to leave some gaps for imagination. So here's what I got. Oh my God. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I have a Mac, so now it's going to do something crazy, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Sure.
We'll see them one by one. I saw the series of yours.
Like for example, again, this is not the best one. And again, right, if you look at the clouds, they're a bit too pretty, a bit too, right? So I was actually trying to make a kind of like a Soviet landscape of my childhood with telegraph poles. But what you get is a cross between this and a 17th century Holland. Right?
Yes.
You get something. But this one is nice, for example. So, and then finally, I'll show you one more. And you like the first.
You also had this islands. You had this islands of trees amidst the field of snow.
Exactly. So I basically tried using different painters, and somehow I hit, I think, on the gold mine by specifying a painting by René Magritte, a famous Belgian surrealist. The paintings it does are kind of more realistic because But what it does, like, I think visually they're just very charming. I think they're just very, very good modern paintings, right? I'll just open one by one.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, okay, this one I think is maybe a bit too strange, right? Okay, like this one. You know, I would be so happy. I mean, I don't think I can paint as good, right? And I think the composition is perfect, right? The contrast is perfect. Now, I did specify something. I said monochrome colors and silver tones, and you kind of get this. So I'll just show you maybe one more, from the same series, like this one, and look at this one, right? Yeah. So, so I would say ultimately, right? I don't know if I have like a recipe. I think my recipe is basically using my knowledge of history of art, and history of visual culture, and using very simple prompts, and also kind of playing with medium, like, right? Draw a Soviet city in the style of Rembrandt. So you get this hybrids between time and mediums and references. But I would say, you know, we can imagine extending, right? It's almost like making Magritte alive again and having Magritte painting millions of paintings for us. You know? And the fact that it's not as surrealistic, I think it's kind of wonderful. So I'm very, very happy. For example, when I asked it to draw like two people swimming in a public pool, didn't work out. So we're definitely it's almost like, you know, you are in this invisible space, right? Almost you're blind and you're walking. And sometimes you can walk very far in one direction. And sometimes you turn right and you hit a wall. And I think what actually collectively people are exploring the space. So if you look at all the MidJourney images people generated, you'll be able to map the space. But this will require a bit of like collecting these images, visualizing them, and so on. Anyway, so this is my strategies, but I'm sure there are many others, right?
Yes, Lev, I think in this way we are becoming a part of the tool itself. Like we're becoming the kind of the thing that kind of branch out of this tool to discover what's more is there, and to let this tool to kind of fill in this kind of void space. Like we are, I think, are explored by the MidJourney in the same way that we ourselves explore MidJourney, because it's so interesting. It's so interesting to see how whatever limitation the system has, you can kind of overcome the limitation by like adding something. You know, like you use it as a tool, and by this you kind of make one step further with this thing. Like it's not capable of everything, but through human kind of input, it can achieve more and more and more. It's just so interesting.
Well, it is true. But you know what I want to say, I want to complicate your beautiful image a little bit, right? So when people say unlimited imagination, right, or more and more, like what I have, because we're both like visual people, what I think is like there is a point where we start and everybody going different direction. It's almost you have a circle which is getting bigger and bigger. But my image of MidJourney, it's more like a strange shape. So if you go in this direction, you can go infinitely and push it. And when you go in this direction, you hit a wall. So it's actually a very complex shape. Some membranes are very hard. Some membranes are very soft, because there are some simple things I just can't get it to do. Maybe I just don't know how to describe them. And I want to mention one more thing. There's a thing about this whole, all the softwares we mentioned, because we use the same kind of
Lev, can you switch to your image so we can see you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
that's fine.
So,
cool.
So I want to mention, so there is something very fascinating about how the systems work. And even if the systems didn't generate any nice images, this by itself will be enough to talk about. Now, I may make mistake because I haven't read in detail the computer science papers which describe it, but I think here's how it works as I understand it. So basically people find the input is millions of image and text pairs, right? So people take images from internet, and images have descriptions, and that's what the system learns. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is that basically the way you can train it, as I understand it, I may be wrong, you take the image and you slowly add noise until you get completely noisy image. And when you kind of teach the system somehow to reverse the process. So all these images are generated from pure noise, right? 0 ones. And this by itself, I think, is so interesting, both technically and metaphorically, right? So all these beautiful, amazing worlds are coming from pure noise, from pure, image filled with black and white pixels. I think it's such an amazing, beautiful image. I can probably write a whole book, just kind of drifting, right, DJing around this one image.
Yeah.
And the noise is so important in modern culture, right? In the middle of 20th century, people started to think about communication, right, as a kind of play of signal and noise, Claude Shannon. So it's interesting how the noise somehow becomes a foundation of 21st century visual culture as well. I don't have much more to say about it, so maybe next time I'll have a whole theory of, noise and human imagination.
Do you think it's like our inevitable kind of reality in the future is some kind of augmented creativity, like where we use it like as a tool because we have no other option, otherwise it just outpowers us?
When you say about creativity, right, so creativity is a very modern concept. It only started to be used like in the Romantic period, so about 200 years ago, and it only started to become used very widely about 20 years ago. So all this amazing human culture, which we like, and medieval cathedrals and Japanese wood blocks and so on, people did it. We never had the idea of creativity. We simply did it what the client wanted. But another thing I want to say, when early humans have made some drawings on some cave, I think the earliest we found 120,000 years ago. You already have mediation of technology, right? So we can't simply draw with animals we imagine it. We can only draw using limitations and biases of a stone wall and whatever chalk or paint we used, right?
Yeah.
So art and creativity is always uses technology, and every technology, every medium has its own biases, limitations, and affordances. So while MidJourney, DALL-E, and I'm sure more programs people create, we do look like completely different, unlimited, endless. Ultimately, their logic, I think, is no different from any other tool. And also, just as with any other tool, it takes hours and days to get what you want. I mean, I read about people saying, like, I used a week to get this image. So ultimately, again, I want people not to think about it as I press a button and whatever I imagine appears. It's actually a completely different process.
I can give you an example. First of all, I want to refer to the article that you co-authored. It's the AI Aesthetics and Anthropomorphic Myth of Creativity. It's an incredible piece, and I've been reading it, having like a lot of disagreements in the beginning, and then you brought me to the point where you actually kind of put all the disagreements there, like you listed them, and I can realize that you actually had them in mind from like all the way from the beginning. And
I see.
Yeah, it was an interesting, like kind of almost like an Aikido trick. Really enjoyed the article. I want to like give an example of the use of MidJourney, for example, in the current world. The company I'm working at right now called Mythology Studio. So we do like architecture installations, we do retail design, we do graphic design. So it's kind of like a multi-dimensional, like a multi-creative studio, and we do product design as well. So one of the assignments was to design a bottle of a certain kind of alcohol, like a mezcal bottle, like a design of it. And I tried to use MidJourney. So I put the ratio of the image, and I make the ratio the size of the bottle that I want, right? So I set like the material
5x8 or something, 6x9 or something.
Yes. I had a specific shape. It was like a pear shape, and I said I want a pear shape. And I said, I want this kind of material and this kind of material. And I want it to be rendered in this style. And I got, like, in a matter of 10 minutes, I got, I think, about 60 different beautiful renderings, amazing renderings. My boss,
which probably include things you just never imagined.
And I never imagined.
Exactly. So I noticed that lots of product designers, I think, use MidJourney, and often they come out of really good stuff. So people design it's
incredible. And I think if we are kind of realistic
don't tell your boss.
pragmatic,
Don't tell your boss because he will like fire you. Okay.
No, but that's the
I'm
thing.
joking.
Like because I can use it as an extension. Like that's why I say augmented creativity, because
it's some kind of meta sketch tool.
I know what I want to get. So it will take me days to design it and to render it in this quality. And I don't want to use it as a final result. I only use it as a search in the beginning, when you shoot the different options. And then I'm like, okay.
Basically, exploring space of possibilities, including parts of a space which would be very hard for any human to imagine, because we have our own biases, right? You are biased by wine bottles and perfume bottles. You're kind of biased by all the bottles which exist. Yeah. And I think MidJourney, it's sort of biased by this, but less so, because you can say, make a bottle using marble and snow, right? And it will make
Exactly. This bottle did not exist before. It did not exist before.
So in a way, I think that definitely in the right hands of somebody like you, it can definitely extend our imagination and our variability, but not everybody is going to be like you. But also at the end, I want to raise maybe ethical question, right?
Let's do it.
So while it's great to design bottles and to design imaginary planets from snow, we do live in the shadow of climate change. We know that, we still have to exist. We have to make beautiful architecture. We have to make pictures which make people happy. But in a way, I'm not critical of you or of your colleagues or myself, but the world in some ways maybe needs, right, less new products, less new images. The world needs the people who have power to start implementing scientific theories and changing economies of countries, right? To combat
self-restraint. Like a self-restraint.
And I don't want to be like moralistic and say everything, we have to drop everything and only focus on this. But it's an interesting question to ask, right? How can these tools be helpful? Yeah. And what I think is the most important issue of our time, right? And I have no idea. And again, I'm not saying you or, Zaha Hadid office or somebody else have to work on this, but I think it's an interesting question to ask because I think it's a difficult question to ask.
Yes. It's a moral question. Yeah. And it's kind of like Facebook that has a censorship, and you use some kind of idiom and then suddenly it thinks it's a racial slur or it's like culturally insensitive and just block somebody, is that something that you would like the system to do? Like to give you a filtered result, like kind of guide you? Like that's I think that's also going to be a thing. Like, how they, for example, limiting pornography from MidJourney, right? Like they're not allowing.
No, but MidJourney, it was a very interesting article which lots of people are reading. I'm actually going to comment on it by MidJourney, right? By the kind of CEO of the company. He says we work very hard to limit like pornography. We also we on purpose made a system which is kind of biased towards beautiful renderings and paintings. And it's harder to make photography because we don't want people to use it for deepfakes. So, now, the digital culture is getting more and more sophisticated. So after 6 years or so of dealing with it, people are smarter. But, excluding pornography is one thing, and somehow helping the world to accept the hard fact that we have to limit our consumption. Like what Europe already is going to do this winter, right? So in this case, it's climate change. In this case, it's like an ex-communist Putin in Kremlin, right? Who's trying to blackmail Europe. And again, I don't want to say we have to drop everything we're doing and only kind of do what we can, because ultimately, okay, we all sorting out trash. We're doing already something, but can we use system like MidJourney as a way to maybe help people imagine? Maybe we can make more images which will show the terrible effects of climate change 50 years from now. There are some visualizations like this published by newspapers, but maybe we can do more. So that will be one example of maybe like kind of moral use, so to speak. Perhaps.
It's interesting that I also want to ask you, Lev, if you're limited in time, if you need to go soon.
No, I have we can do a bit more, 5-10 minutes.
Okay, that's perfect. Beautiful. It's very interesting that you talked about climate change, but for me, it's one of the examples of some kind of a self-restraint that people kind of seeking for, sometimes like subconsciously in our age, because the hierarchies, the discipline is something that kind of a little bit left in the past, and now people try to re-implement it back in their lives, but already under the rubric rubric of new philosophies, of lack of philosophy, like try to build in self-restraint in your life, and like
exactly,
the climate change.
Minimalism, right? Minimalism, like living with 12 things, exactly.
Yes,
So
yes.
after this kind of hedonistic
Stoicism,
consumption,
yes.
or basically hedonistic consumption only starts in the 60s, because until 60s, you know, most of the world was as poor, was not much richer in the Soviet Union. I mean, people after a war in England, we still had food stamps until 1952, right?
Yes,
Which
yes.
hedonistic consumption starts, and then it kind of goes to developing world in China. And so we have about 40, 50 years of it. Now we have to go back to a kind of like stone age, right? And said, okay, we don't want to use 5 TVs in our houses.
Yeah.
So it's like a new discipline, a new monastic regime, which I think is good anyway.
Yeah, it's called anhedony, if I remember. It's the the desire, the kind of when you have everything, like this push from there to kind of start to reject things, in like it's kind of like a psychological kind of alter ego.
Like maybe I mean, I think in human history we had many philosophers, right?
Like a stoicism,
Stoicism,
exactly. Stoicism is very popular right now.
The whole monastic. When you think about monastic Christian existence, it's like minimalism, right? It's like it's less is more. You basically just in your cell and you're praying whole day.
I see in New York, for example, among my friends, the raising popularity of philosophies as Stoicism, for example, people buying these books, and like the appeal is that it's non-religious. It doesn't have a cult. It has this kind of discipline just ingrained in the philosophy that's kind of strictly in the void of any cults, which people really like. And I think in this topic,
because Buddhism kind of brings lots of things, but Stoicism is like in a way it's more like easy to implement approach.
Yeah, it's like only you and your dignity. Yeah,
one thing about New York is that people live in such tiny apartments. You can't really put too many objects.
You have to. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, so basically it's like perfect for like it's also for Japan, right? It's perfect philosophy. You know, when we travel different cities, as long as the city has a hotel, Citizen M hotel, which has like 11 square meters capsules, we stay there. Because if you try to stay in anything else, it's basically depressing, right? Because the rooms are tiny. So in a way, it's also perfect for our overpopulated mega cities.
Yeah, and I think in this way, MidJourney is not there yet. And my first, the word that came to my mind when I saw like weeks and weeks, I was looking for like looking through thousands of images that architects create. Or like non-architects, but in architecture topic. The words that came to my mind is visual gluttony. You know, the visual.
Yes. Visual orgy. So what I want to do before we just end, I will show you something which I think people have not seen before. So when I saw MidJourney, right, I immediately said, this is perfect material for cultural analytics. Cultural analytics simply refers to the idea which I developed after 2005, but there are lots of people doing it, of using kind of big samples of culture, text, images, spaces, even applying computer tools to analyze it to see patterns. So let me show you something interesting. Okay. So a few weeks ago, my research assistant went to Discord MidJourney channel, and I said, why don't you just collect why don't you collect like a data set of prompts, right? Just for prompts. So here are the prompts, unsorted. In fact, what I'm going to today is use a text computational linguistics tools and analyze it so we can see most frequent words. But what I want to say, if you simply look at this, we see examples of what you call visual gluttony. Look, for example, right? Octane render, right? It's realistic,
hyper-realistic. Yeah, show me details.
Right? I think, in fact, probably in a few hours, I can tell you what percentage, but my feeling is probably 20-30%.
Oh, a lot.
Of course, people want to see detail because you want to kind of get picture in your head. So, not everybody has to make those Japanese woodblocks, but, top-down texture, psychedelic, sci-fi, circuiting style, and also we specify with artists who are known for rich renderings.
Yes,
it's a kind of equivalent of overconsumption, I think.
Yeah. Also, Lev, I think would be super cool to see which words they used in the first weeks of MidJourney and which one they
Sure.
use now, because now they use whatever is successful. You know, they repeat. You can see they repeat the
Well,
same kind of copy paste sometimes, like the
yeah.
octane render, like
So
colada
yeah,
render.
sometimes I see people actually like I make something successful, and once in a while I see somebody like using the same prompt right away, which kind of
Yeah.
makes me happy. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
also the founder of MidJourney said that the system is learning from people
Yeah.
feedback, right?
I must.
So I
I
don't know
must.
how. Yeah, I don't know how it's learning. Anyway, I'll stop here. But so definitely, there's also something. So we need maybe kind of a call for visual stoicism.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. Yeah. So just like to kind of start to like finalize and like can come to some kind of logical conclusion.
Conclusion.
I just want to say one thing first that I think is very important, that it gave to people who had nothing to do with visual culture, who could never produce any visual thing except for photography. It gave them this new media, which is
Yes.
like absolutely amazing, because I have a lot of friends of mine who are potentially very creative people, but they're like in
Yeah. We
economy and
never taught. We
accounting.
were never taught how to draw, or yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think to me, you know, the most important potential with tools, right? It's not about giving more tools to architects, designers, and game
yeah,
designers. Yes, it's not. But it's basically potentially. I don't think it's where yet. Creating a new type of language, right? So
yes, yes,
humans can draw pictures, but not everybody can draw a picture. Now
yeah,
you can have 3D media and photography. But and when 100 years ago, not everybody can write and read, right? But humans
yeah,
have language. So now we have visual language. But as I said, it's not quite there yet, because as you saw, some things it's very easy to create, some things are impossible.
yeah,
But I think it will become easier, and the fact that everybody can now communicate using pictures. This is why I think this is a truly revolutionary development.
yeah,
And ultimately, it's more important. This is more important than what you, me, or your architect friends do with tools, although it's also very important.
yes,
But it's
yeah, I
really
agree.
I would say it's further democratizing communication in a way, right?
Yes,
And taking it away from, because before I would have to hire illustrator and pay this person hundreds of dollars to get something, and now I can do it immediately.
yeah,
But it will be interesting to document, right, how people who never be able to draw,
yeah,
how we use these tools.
yeah,
Because looking at these prompts, my feeling is lots of these people do have some kind of visual training,
yeah.
but it's hard to say, right? But I'm
But
sure
it's
that
also, yeah,
people do ethnographic studies, and in a year or two we'll see some articles
yeah,
about.
yeah. I think it's for some people, it's very liberating. It gives so much more, like an incredible new world is open for lots of people. Like you can do illustrations for your diaries, for example. You can do illustrations for your dreams, even.
I
Like
mean,
the things.
somebody I
It's
know, of course. I mean, somebody I know, and I'm doing the same, creating illustrations for your fiction, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I mean, you can also, yeah, I mean, exactly. But, maybe I'll mention one last thing in the beginning. So one of the ideas which came to mind is how you can use this as a machine to see your memories.
yeah,
Or because our memories, because what I want to say, somebody said, right, that we now discovered all geography, we have GPS. So the last undiscovered continent is our past. Like I'm trying to remember, okay, how did my friend look 10 years ago? How did New York felt in 2003 versus 2006?
yeah,
And how did my street in Moscow look in 1974? And there are lots of photographs of New York 10 years ago, but not so many photographs of New York, 150 years ago, and not so many
yes,
photographs of my street in Moscow, because what you
yeah,
have is journalistic photographs which show, collective farmers or people staying in line. So the ordinary, as we go back in history, the ordinary every day was not documented.
yeah, yeah,
Right? I mean, the only places where you can see is very good movies, because we do lots of art direction, but
yes,
we're not going to show my street. So basically what I try to do is I spend nowadays trying to guide MidJourney to create images of like Soviet cities and Soviet streets, mid-70s, as I remember them.
that you remember, yeah,
And
to see.
it got pretty far, but I'm never able to get the precise details, precise atmosphere, even the precise architecture. So in a way,
Yeah,
it's creating this kind of false memories, right?
yeah,
Just as the cinema industry also creates these particular memories, which when in a way become our idea of a past. And I think this is fascinating, right? Because we'll see more things in this direction. So, for example, you want to get a picture of how did your room look when you were 5 years old. But maybe it will become easier. But there is a danger, right? But in a way, it will create these false memories. So it will construct the past as opposed to seeing the past. And, we both come from Russia. So perhaps, we have a sense, I mean, at least in my case, I would say I have a strong sense of history. I lived, right, from first Cold War, even perestroika, and then 30 years of like a new age. And now we're in the middle of a war, which I know wanted to mention, right? So world, in a way, has gone back 30 years. World is now divided again into superpower. Right? There's America, there's China. Russia is trying to unite, create some kind of Slavic world, right, so to speak. And in a way, this ability not just to imagine the future, right, and the robots and so on, but the ability to imagine the past. Is, to me, this is as important and as fascinating as as a use of this kind of tools.
And by you picking the options that you think are better, you think you're training the machine actually to know that time better.
Well, the thing is, I don't know, right? But according to, as I understand, according to MidJourney founder, right? I think we're feeding, like whatever people are doing, in some ways we're feeding back into the system. So I think the system is getting better. Somebody posted today that the system seems to be also learning your individual preferences. So when somebody asks you to draw like a door, it may be this door covered with plants because the person was doing this kind of plant architecture.
Like a little echo chamber.
It's only been around after 2 months, right? And it's a very small startup.
Incredible.
But anyway, we should probably finish.
We should probably finish. And like the last question that's just like completely like
the last question.
Yes. What you just said, like from like coming from there, what do you think would be the next thing? Like what do you think from here would be the big leap forward? Like by
Sure. Okay. Well, so I can think of many things, right? But it's kind of impossible to actually predict development of science and technology, right? Like, for example, nobody has seen the World Wide Web coming in '93. I mean, it's exploded, right? Nobody, especially its inventor, right? You had a graphic browser that exploded.
But you did it in the '90s and 2000s, so you can maybe do it again.
So here are a few things. Here are a few things I would like to see, and I think some will be realized, and some are not. Like, for example, so right now you have this kind of text image system. So you're using the power of human language. The fact that, in fact, our language is very powerful visual media, because we can say, a subtle drawing of golden cathedral. I mean, we often say that text is more limited in comparison to images. It's not as subtle in descriptions, but actually it's amazing. But anyway, we're using text interface to create images. What if you can use pictures? So in fact, I'm an architect. I can sketch something on a napkin, show it to MidJourney, when MidJourney will do a kind of rendering and also give me variations. So, because this will allow me to control perspective and so on. Another thing is to actually give the systems more spatial understanding. So you can say, like, I want to look at this building from 30 degree up, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, animation, right, would be another thing. So, for example, like generating, but the MidJourney founder said, okay, I think in 1 year we'll have animation. So I think that from point of view of people like you and me, right, a more spatial awareness would be good.
More points of control.
Understanding how things are connected, right? So because right now, in a way, what it's doing is like simulating the look of things, right? It doesn't really understand what's inside. It's like making a picture with human, but it doesn't really know about anatomy. That's why pictures of humans in MidJourney often look very awkward.
Always awkward. And same with architecture a little bit as well.
And I think another thing which will be, I think, to create a kind of controls, almost to create a recommendation system. So when you're asking for something, it gives you what you want, and then it shows you alternatives. I mean, this already exists, right? In many versions of MidJourney, you have this kind of like a parameter, so you can generate more similar things and more different things. I think this is very promising. And of course, also creating a completely different interfaces, right? So not text to image, but something else. I don't know what. Because ultimately, I think the key aspect of technology is interface. This interface empowers us. and
Elon
castrated
Musk's
at the
neural
same
link.
time, right? The graphical user interface, it's a very successful, but it gives you particular image of consumer. I mean, tools like Maya and Grasshopper have particular interfaces. And also building a system which in fact will have no particular statics built in. So you actually will have to work very hard to make a beautiful image. This can be very beautiful. This can be a great system for art education. Because right now, if I give it to art students, we say I don't have to go to art school, right? I already have this tool. So there are, I see 5 or 6 possibilities. I think some will be realized quickly, some will never be realized. But just remember that this technology has also been around for like literally a couple of months. And think about the web in 93, right? And what the web is today. So we do live in a very interesting time. I would say I haven't been as excited about digital media. Since probably social media, in the late 2000s, because I felt things kind of reached certain stable state. This digital media became like TV, right? People are not going to change Facebook interface a lot because it's used by 3 billion people. But now we are in this new world, and this is why I basically spend my life in new media, because it is unpredictable. It's a cultural force which nobody can control, neither industry, nor academia, nor art world, right? It has its own logic, and we never know how it's going to be used. And I think as an artist, I thought, if I was in the 1920s, I would use film. If I was in 1600s, I would use oil paint, right? So for me, new media is amazing because it's unpredictable, and somehow it does allow me to see new things. But of course, there is also danger. But today, the best, smartest people of our time are not creating Mona Lisa or not creating, Potemkin's October. We're actually creating the tools. So the tool making has almost replaced the content making in a way. So often these tools like internet are more amazing than anything you can do with internet, right? Internet itself is the greatest artwork. And this is also, I think, something to think about, an interesting question, right? How tool building and technology building has become almost the art of our time.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for this inspiration that is contagious and can be visible through your Facebook, through your posts, because I enriched my knowledge and interest of MidJourney in many ways thanks to your posts, and for me it became an incredible tool. I see how many potentials it has, and I encourage people to read your articles and to just follow you as well and use it. And I think together, smart use will make it a better tool, and not be afraid of things.
Well, I appreciate it very much. I mean, thank you for initiating this conversation. I am writing on a kind of text where I'm putting my ideas. You heard about them in this conversation, and maybe perhaps if you're interested, maybe in 1 year we can have a follow-up, because by this time the tools will develop, and it'll be interesting to compare and to also see what did we get right and what did we get wrong. Because the future, in fact, is unlimited. The future is unlimited. The future of our planet is perhaps limited by its geography, geology, its position in the universe. But the future of human imaginary technologies of imagination is, I would say, almost unlimited. And it's only limited by our own biases and our desire for visual gluttony or photorealism or parametric architecture. So let's meet, after some time and look back and look forward. Thank you so much, Anton.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lev. Have a great day, and let's catch up. And whenever you're in New York, let's maybe just have a coffee and discuss things.
Thank you.
Thank you.